And when you're ready, I can share the one pager on my screen.
Do you have an address for this Facebook page? Can you do it into the chat?
We could do chats, and we're now live, Heinz. I'm Chris.
So can you give me the link on the Facebook where it's online?
Yeah, it's going to be on Facebook. You just check Hudson Valley Current, and you'll be able to find this live video. I'm Chris Hewitt. I'm the director of the Hudson Valley Current. I'm here with my co-host, Keyvious Avery. He and I do livelihood news every Friday at 2 p.m. And this week, we're going to be doing something called the Current 5 at 5 Talks. Today's topic is what is money? And our guest is Heinz Hafner. I met him last September in Japan, and I was able to hear his lecture. He's a brilliant thinker on money, local currencies, and financial systems in general. Keyvious, you want to bring up that card you created about Heinz?
Of course.
So today is What is Money? And we're here with Heinz and Keyvious. I'm Chris Hewitt. We'll examine definitions of money and why most people don't understand what it is. Does money only come from the Federal Reserve, or are there other types of money? Is there enough money to go around? Heinz is an expert in innovative currency solutions, alternative economic and monetary systems, and complementary currencies. He's got an interactive approach to currency design and implementation. And when I first met Heinz in Japan, he said, "You have a food truck? You should just charge your local currency, the current, instead of dollars. And when people try to use dollars, you say, no, we don't take those." So Heinz, great to see you. It's amazing that you could join us at 11 p.m. in Germany. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder, Heinz, what got you interested in complementary currencies? I want to ask this for both of you. Like, what got you interested in complementary currencies, and what have you seen the difference between using a current or using a complementary currency versus using a dollar, before we dive deep into exactly what money is, you know?
So I would say that's pretty easy. I studied in Munich mathematics, and the application was the side applications was economics. And as a student, you have to listen to two sides. You are doing the main course in mathematics, and they are showing you the exponential curve. And then they tell you, this is a crazy unstable curve, because at the end it's going crazy. And 1 hour later, you're going to the economics course, and there's a guy who tells you, this is our curve we want to have. That's the exponential curve of money. And then you have to think about it. Who is right? Is it the mathematician, or is it the economics guy? And that was the starting point to look into money systems. Into interest-based money systems. And then you see money makes money, and then you get in a forceful way into this exponential curve. And I think in our times at the moment, lots of times in history also, but we are not living long enough to see it, this curve is in sometimes getting crazy. And I think we are in a time it's getting crazy.
Yeah.
That's
the point why I searched very early in my life alternatives, and I wouldn't call it alternatives at this point, because no complementary currency system is really an alternative. It's only complementary, so it's only an add-on which can solve some other fields where money in the interest-based money system is not right positioned. So that's my fundamental understanding at this point.
Nice.
I catch the point, or do I have to add something?
No, I think you're set. We'll circle back on it, but I want to get Chris's take on what got him involved into complementary currencies and the differences between a complementary currency and a dollar that you've seen.
Mm-hmm. Well, growing up in a printing family on Long Island, my dad's pressman often used to pull me over and whisper, "Hey, Chris, when are we going to print money?" And for years as a kid, I thought that was hilarious and illegal. So when I went to a conference at Bard College, where Keyvious actually studies economics, in 2004, there was a conference called Local Currencies in the 21st Century that was put on by the E.F. Schumacher Society, which right after that launched the Berkshire in Massachusetts. That's when I realized it's legal and possible to create a community currency. And also as an activist throughout college, I was involved in a boycott against Pepsi because they were supporting a prostitution ring in Myanmar. And through that, their money was supporting the military dictatorship in Myanmar. I was also boycotting Home Depot to get old growth forest products out of their stores. And my economics teacher said, boycotts don't work. That's ridiculous. And so he was taught this very conservative economic theory that said boycotts and hitting people in the pocketbook don't work. I disagreed, and I persevered, and we got old growth forest products out of Home Depot, for example. That led me to pursue my journalism career and study journalism, and that led to me into publishing. Everyone who advertises loves bartering, and as a publisher, I love bartering too. When I found out that local currency is legal and possible, I saw it as a way to keep track of my barters originally, and so the first current members were my advertisers in my publication. Then that allowed circulation to happen, which led to 6 years of flow and 600,000 currents transacted since 2013. And that's when I met Dr. Leanne Usher, who traveled to Japan with us. She did a network analysis of the Hudson Valley Current and how that moves through the community. And when I met Heinz, it's when I realized we can have food back our community currency instead of just the publication. And that's when we launched our catering company. So it's been a real fun evolution and a great journey.
Yeah, and I think to add to that point is what got me interested in complementary currencies is seeing the inequalities that are present in our current system with the dollar. And growing up very poor, I always wanted to know why do these inequalities exist, and how does a system look where everyone has to contribute to overall wealth. And so when I started, first learning about, interest rate and interest-based money systems, and learning about how money is created, which we'll talk about today, I wanted to contribute more to local currencies and economic growth in that way, which I think is a uniting feature of all of us. So Heinz, I think you talked about the relationship between money and interest, right? And there are two guiding arguments on how money is created. So I think let's hit those guiding arguments and then expound upon the implications that they create. So you have the endogenous approach to how money is created versus the exogenous approach to how money is created. Are you familiar with the two arguments? The first one, endogenous, is that money supply is not a function of interest rates. Is that money is created as demand for that money comes about. I'll put in simple terms. And then the exogenous approach is that money is a function of interest rates, and that no matter how much interest rate goes down, the money supply comes from that central bank. So I just want to know, given your research in interest rates and how they relate to money, what is your take on the two arguments? What have you found?
So for me, I have to confess that it's not the interest-based thing at the moment, because if you look at the interest rates at the moment, interest rates are just going crazy into the negative. So that's not the point for the exponential thing at the moment. It's more the printing of money, as Chris has mentioned, as the power of a central organization to give us the possibility to extend the economy. And if you look at the moment, the economy is not extending in means of market growth. We do not have better access to some goods or something like that. It's exactly the opposite, because by going down during the crisis at the moment, you see that the goods are not available in the normal seamless way, and the market is really tumbling, so it's not growing. And as I have learned, the central bank is normally adjusting the amount of money to the wealth that is produced. And at the moment, this is not the case, because if you look how money is extended at the moment, how on credit base money is spread to whatever crisis fields it's needed. That's what's the official story behind. I think it's the other way around. Take away the interest on the one side, which is a profit-oriented way to use money, making money by getting interest. So let's go to the profit thing, because once you have a huge amount of money available, you as the user of the money, do you have to make profit to make a market go on? So for example, I have $100, you have $100, and we need some goods. So we exchange the money for getting this goods and the trading running. But if you don't have money, but you have some goods, you get my money. So there is maybe a profit or not, because this is a market thing. If it's profitable to offer your goods, it's a different thing than an automatic interest thing. So back to the money system, we need for doing trade some calculated way of exchanging some transaction good. Let's call it money. So if you have necessary goods on the one side and you have necessary money on the other side, it can be interchanged, it can be exchanged by trading. So at the moment, I see two ways to do it. I have dollars on the one side. If those are valid and I have them, I can do trading. If I don't have dollars, I cannot trade. It's as simple as it is. On the other side, if the dollar is there, but it's not worth anymore anything, which also can happen, then there will be also no trade. So for me, I go down to the transaction system, not the interest, not the profit, because this is a market thing for me. If there is an interest rate, it's a market thing. If there is a profit to be made, it's a market thing. So let's take out the market for the first thing. If there are two independent parties that want to exchange something, they need some kind of how do you call it? It's a medium. They need a medium. I wouldn't call it money in the first. I would an exchange medium.
Right. That's great. And that I just brought up the definition of money for that reason. But before I move on from interest, I want to define usury for people. What's interesting about usury is it's mentioned in almost every sacred text, every religious text says that usury should be illegal. And that is the exorbitant, that's charging exorbitant interest rates. And there are 2 states in the United States that don't have usury laws. Every credit card company is based in those 2 states, because if they get late payments, they could jack you up to 25% interest, and it's not illegal. That's actually usury. So in our grant funding that we've written, we've talked about creating a post-usury society, because we don't make money on currents. If a member starts using currents, we don't make any money. There's no transaction fees and there's no interest. And so I'm going to read the definition of money because we're going to get a little bit deeper into some of the other definitions. And I like that it uses the word current right in this definition.
I love this, Chris, because you break it down to the basic function of being a medium.
That's right.
Which means exchanging needs some calculated way of weighing the value on the left side to the right side. And for me, it's a basic function. But at the moment, if you look at the crisis here in Germany, we have a wonderful situation that most of the people who would be unemployed because of the special situation are getting at least 60 to 80% for, it's called Kurzarbeit, which means they are not getting unemployed, but sent home, having not as much hours to work and getting some money from the state as a compensation.
Wow.
But what is if this happens that they are really unemployed afterwards because the market is not working anymore, which means they have not the medium anymore in the amount they need for the daily living.
That's right.
Then the medium is gone away.
Yeah. And that's why on Friday, we're going to talk about our current community protection plan, because it's a way to use our local currency to do something similar about unemployment. And in this definition I'm about to read to you, it says, a current medium of exchange, and the current meaning modern, because it must be used today. Let me read this real quick. Money, a current medium of exchange in the form of coins and banknotes collectively, or it's also sums of money, the assets, property, and resources owned by someone or something, wealth. The definition itself is so arbitrary and abstract that a friend that Heinz and I have, Heinz knew him before Japan, and I met him in Japan, and I just spoke to him yesterday. Leander Bindewald wrote his doctoral paper about the fact that even regulators don't know what money is. They can't come up with a good definition, because in this definition it says in the form of coins and banknotes. That's wrong. We're talking now about capital. I could tell you a story, Keyvious, and you could see so much value in that you'll buy me dinner. My story becomes money and capital, social capital, cultural capital. My mom is from Sicily. I could share a recipe with you. That's a form of exchange that you value. And so now we're talking value and exchange, right? The definition of money itself is so vague, even the regulators can't keep up with it. So we're in the process of getting a new license and approvals from the Department of Financial Services. They are fascinated by the fact that we've never made money on our money. They haven't seen it. Who in their right mind would give money away for free? We don't actually do that because each member becomes a central bank of their own. We don't have currents in our possession, but if Heinz signs up today, he gets an interest-free line of credit of 300 currents. He could go below zero and give me 20 currents today. He goes to negative 20 and I go to positive 20. That's a mutual credit relationship. It's about the fact that Heinz and I are both valuable. Keyvious and I are both valuable. We each have things we can exchange, and all we need is a medium between us to connect us.
And that's a point I want to grab this point, because at the moment there is lots of discussions as I described the situation, what is happening to those unemployed people if the crisis keeps up, and they are talking about this basic income. But this is also only a credit in means of money is giving to you for free, but there is no free money, because it's just a credit in means of you are valuable in some way, therefore you get some basic income. Because who is producing this income? It has to come somewhere from.
I love that, Heinz.
And I'm absolutely fond of having a basic income or a basic amount of mutual credit for people to have a living. But on the other side, if there is no value coming from those people, then it won't work for 10 years.
You're going to love this idea, Heinz. I meet with Leanne every week now because we're doing a new study. Actually, Leanne, who you met in Japan, is Keyvious' professor. She created a new educational track at Bard College called Community Currencies. And so I met Keyvious through Leanne, and she's doing a new study that started on March 10th when the crisis started. And it's going to go to September 10th. It's a 6-month analysis of the Hudson Valley Current in our communities. And we just came up with this idea, instead of calling it a universal basic income, it should be called a reciprocal basic income.
What?
Reciprocal basic income.
Yeah, that's the point. The mutual part was missing.
That's right.
And that's the point I wanted to tell you at this point. I'm very interested in having a basic situation for every person to have a living and being free of this panic situation. But on the other side, you have to reactivate those people and bring them back into this capital building in means of social capital, in means of some value production, because people are stuck. Once you give them money for free, it's not thought that they can make online gaming all the whole day and not producing something, because then they are missing the most important point for the community, but also for themselves, for the self-esteem, for everything that makes you valuable outside of your normal existence.
I love it. It's like the dollar makes us feel worthless. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned about reciprocity in the financial system?
Yeah, so, well, first off, we're talking about two different I want to tie reciprocity into understanding how that universal level of, I guess, income, that universal basic income is acquired. Um, if, as you said, Heinz, if you just give people money, as a form of UBI, there's no economic production that comes after that. There's no value assigned to that. However, if you give people, such as what the Hudson Valley Current is doing, an extended line of credit that you can use, saying, hey, we understand that you have, expenses that you have to live off of, but under this mutual credit system where it's like you still have to earn, this then it goes into employing reciprocity and putting reciprocity into the equation, which touches on, one of the core values and core principles of alternative currency, which is the sustainability of purchasing power, right? Is we match a market supply and market demand through this system that we call reciprocity, where we now, what the dollar doesn't allow us to have, is we have control, and we have control over that purchasing power as the market expands, as we expand. The money supply expands as we expands, and if it happens, and if it so happens to be that I, go into a negative, I still have to earn it in order to stay contributing to this process. And I want to know, considering that reciprocity, Chris, is what inspired you to do the line of credit, considering people's needs, what is money, and why is that line of credit so important, and what does it take for someone to earn that line of credit, and what does it mean to earn that line of credit?
Well, early on, the original board of directors at the Hudson Valley Current decided on 300 currents as the line of credit, interest-free, because it's an amount of debt that almost anyone can take on. I say almost anyone because some people literally can't work. Their body doesn't let them, or they have an issue that's preventing them from working. So almost anyone can handle a 300 current line of credit. And if we see on the back end that somebody hit negative 300, our staff's role is to help them earn again. And so that's fun for us, because it helps us say, well, what do you like doing? You like babysitting? Do you like drawing? Whatever you like to do, we will match your offer to someone who's looking for that. And now we help.
And that, Chris, is for the reciprocity thing. Exactly the activating point.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you get people into a stuck state, feeling bad because getting free lunch, which isn't free because it has to be earned, it has to be produced. And if people are just producing and building up this positive pile on their side, even if it's a zero game, because someone makes this plus and the minus is still okay for the whole community, but it's not activating those people. So you have to do it in means of reciprocity. You have to help those people to being activated, to find their value again.
Right, good point. And that's why we're working with I'm sorry, Keyvious, I'll just make this point quickly. I saw you were going to say something, but we're working with a grocery store nearby that signed up in November. And as you know, Heinz, that's an anchor, which can become a pooling member. So we work hard on not having that pooling happen, and they just signed up 4 people on their payroll. So now this grocery store is really earning thousands of currents. I forgot why I brought them up, unfortunately, but we have to help match make all the time with them now because they're pooling.
Well, I'm really glad you brought it up, because it leads into my next point, and something that I want to build off of. When you talked about, you decided you were considering how much the line of credit will be in Heinz, when you were talking about how important reciprocity is, that touches on 2 more essential principles of complementary currency. One is that it's a democratic basis, is considering everyone involved. In modern economics, or in our current money system, when we create targets, it could be inflation rates, it could be interest rates, it could be, whatever target is thrown out from who you argue creates the money. But when it's a complementary currency, the targets are determined by each of us collectively. And then the next thing that it touches on, and Chris, when you were talking about the grocery store, is another principle of complementary currency, which is fostering the community. Fostering the community. And that goes into kind of like this is a loaded topic, but I do want to talk about it briefly, is the value of money. So when we talk about the value of a dollar versus the value of a complementary currency, and how, employing reciprocity and looking at each one into a local economy impacts the local economy.
Yeah.
So I know for me, I could go on the Hudson Valley Current digital resilience market and buy a chicken for $17, or go to the grocery store and buy it for $5. Yeah. Chris, can you talk a bit about how powerful that local dollar is, and how me shopping at the local currency market not only feeds myself but ensures that I'm feeding the community?
I'll touch on it briefly because I'm sure Heinz has a lot to add to that also. My point about Hawthorne was going to be the fact that all these people live around that grocery store and they all want to earn currents made me think of this idea of current opportunities. And I've asked Hawthorne to give us 20 things that their staff can accomplish. Let's say weeding a neglected garden bed or painting a wall. They're giving us a list of 20 things, and we're going to pay people who are interested 15 currents an hour to represent the new minimum wage that's coming. And everyone, it's almost like a time bank where everyone's hour is worth the same, but now anyone around Hawthorne can help them move their currents by coming and showing up to weed a garden. And that's an earning and spending opportunity. But the value thing is amazing. And Heinz, I want to talk to you about the Deutschmark during and after World War II. But what we're going to do is compare value of gas, let's say, at $2 a gallon now. Why is olive oil $40 a gallon? Why is orange juice $10 a gallon? These delicious things that don't poison our earth are expensive. And what I've heard is during World War II or before it, you can have a wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks and still can't afford bread. Is that a true story, Heinz?
Last sentence again?
I hear this story over and over, and I don't know if it's just a meme that happened over time, but before World War II in Germany, if you had a whole wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks, you have a lot of the bills, but you still can't afford bread.
It was even worse. It was even worse. You tried to spend your money that you earned in the morning, and you didn't want to wait till a lunchtime because it's so much less worth.
Wow.
So you walked to the grocery store 2 times a day, and you wanted to have your money that you earned in the day in two separate charges, just to have the possibility to buy in time to keep the value up. So this was the last weeks. It was just crazy. It was just, I would say that was the huge printing money phase where you were really a bag full of money, which got you not even your daily lunch.
Wow. Yeah.
But we are, I think at the moment, we are long away from this situation, because there is not some kind of universal inflation or some kind of universal in a general meaning, because as you told, the oil, not the one that you can drink or use for cooking, which is very expensive, a good one, but the oil you can burn. And if you look at the price difference and the change, there is no inflation in pricing for this oil for burning.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a huge inflation in very good eatable oil. So if you look at those, I would call them different classes of investments, it's a total mess in means of inflation, because you can make one overall inflation as one calculated number, which is nothing worth. It's just an abstract average number over everything. Or you can look into the rare things and the even more rare getting things, where the prices are getting crazy already today.
And why is that? Because of subsidies, corporate subsidies?
No, I think there is a non-healthy market mechanism at the moment, because we have learned in economics, the rare things are getting expensive, and the mass things that are there in masses are getting cheaper. And if you look into the market today, you are seeing exactly that. The mass-produced things, which are, I would call them exploiting our earth, and can be exploited very cheaply because of industrial methods, because of huge possibilities being out there. They're even getting cheaper.
Huh. So
which is not an inflation. It's just a crazy deflation.
So it's more profitable to be extractive than regenerative?
If you look at, I wouldn't call it that way, because that's a really very, very short-term thinking.
Yeah.
But market is short-term at the moment. It's everything is decided on short-term reactions.
Well, market doesn't have to be short-term, which we're seeing with local currencies. You know, if we redefine, if we reshape the expansion curve and we create a market supply according to the market demand and gradually grow at that rate, it doesn't have to be short-term, because it goes into the fourth.
I tell you one story about this thing of short-term. In the European Union, there were made new legal statements when the European Union was set up as a market. And there was a rule that said, and hopefully I can translate it to the point.
Can you say it in German first?
No. I catch the point, but give me a second. So there are fish markets in the Northern Sea. And there is written that one of the goals of the European Union is to keep the price and the value of European fish market in the Northern Sea stable. Even make it more worth. But now translated, if you are killing half of the fish, it's more value because it's rarer.
Oh.
So if you look at that, if you destroy your goods, you're earning more.
Crazy.
Less goods. And that's written into the law because it's protective to keep the prices stable or get them up because of the market value. But if you think behind of the scenes, it's making money by destroying goods. Hey man, that's short term.
Yeah.
Because that's a built-in short-term thinking. Because then you will destroy more and more the markets. You will have more values with the rare things left, which sounds like everything's fine because prices are stable or going up slightly. But if you look behind the scenes, it's just destroying our baseline.
Right.
Yeah.
Mother Earth thinks long term.
So that's exactly what I'm talking about when I mean short term. Long term means, how do we care and how do we build up values?
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I like my friend Martin Kirk calls it slack in the economy. Like I get an invoice or a bill from my utility company. They want that money now, due on receipt. But some people give me a little bit of slack and they say due in 30 days. That's still pretty tense. That's a lot of tension in our economy. You get a bill, you pay it. You get a bill, you pay it. And so that stresses us out. So what we're doing.
This stress is exactly what you see at the market at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Once the storing of oil is so expensive at the moment because no one uses it for flying, for whatever transportations. So there's lots of oil as a surplus.
Uh-huh.
And it's cost a lot of money to store it. So that makes it cheap. That's why oil is absolutely cheap at the moment. Everybody wants to get rid of it because it's expensive to store and trade. But once it would be not enough because our earth is going down and we don't have much more oil, then it's getting crazy expensive.
Interesting.
So and that's a mechanism, that's the market mechanism. That's quite okay. We have to accept it. But once we have only the market handling itself, we are getting to totally crazy ways of making money, of getting cheap products, because it's just dependable on those special situations.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen something else happen with gas. I feel there's a range, $2 to $4. And I know in Europe, gas is much more expensive. And I always remind people that when they're like, I drove 8 miles out of my way to get cheaper gas. Well, in Europe, it's expensive, and look how they build their cities: walkable, bikeable, right? We changed their infrastructure based on pricing. And what I've noticed in this area in the last 10 years, every time the gas hits $4 and goes above it, people bike. And then they're like, oh shit, bring it back below 4, they're biking.
And I have the same experience at the moment. And I think it's not good because Chinese products or industrially produced mass products are still a lot too cheap in comparison what they're doing to our earth. Once this industrialized producing of goods would be a lot more expensive, would have the real price tag, I call it always, we would change so many ways of producing again to a more healthy way.
Beautiful.
But the other way around, it's working at the moment. So the local stuff, the local grocery things are such an expensive luxury compared to this industrialized low-grade food. And that has to be changed. I think there must be a lot of uppricing in those industrial shit things so that we can have more and more value again on self-producing local economy, things that are a lot healthier for people and the environment. And that's also a market thing, because it's if it's there, if we would produce it again locally, it would get cheaper again.
I think you all are hitting on a very, very important, another principle in economics, another principle in complementary currency. And now, because Chris, when you were talking about gas prices in Europe, you said, yeah, they built infrastructure around pricing. You know, here in America, and when we talk about the inequality that the money system here creates, is we create infrastructure off of profit. You know, and there is no reciprocity there in profit. And that goes into the fourth principle of complementary currencies, and that's sustainability, which you're talking about, Heinz, is not only is it detrimental, and, you know, we could talk about short run and long run, you know, profits are short run, which is why, you know, this is not sustainable. You know, you can make a lot of money off of burning fossil fuels, as we were talking about earlier. It's like, you know, we can exploit the earth, but that only goes so much, you know. That's why, you know, in the short run, it may look great. In the long run, it's not sustainable. So, you know, by embracing a local currency, when we're creating infrastructure, not via a growth machine, but where we create the market, we create the demand, and we move accordingly, you know, along with the dollar, because we do acknowledge the weight that the official currency has, is we're approaching a whole different system here. And Chris, I want to know, when we talk about profit, I know we're in the last 5 minutes here, is one more aspect of the current is what made you go with interest free? When we talk about, you know, you could go 300 currents, why interest free, and why is that important?
That's a wonderful question. And because we have 5 minutes left, I'm just going to remind anyone who just tuned in, this is Chris Hewitt with the Hudson Valley Current. And this week, every day at 5 o'clock, we're going to have a talk about money. It's our 5 at 5 Money Talks. Today is What is Money? And our guest is Heinz Hafner from Germany. And he is a brilliant expert in innovative currency solutions, alternative economic and monetary systems, and complementary currencies. We've had an amazing talk, and if you've missed it, I would recommend you go to Facebook Live, our Facebook page, Hudson Valley Current, and check it out. And what made us choose to go interest-free? I am what people call a serial entrepreneur. I've started many businesses since I was 10 years old, and I know how to make money. But I knew, because of usury and what I've learned about usury, that making money on money is problematic. It creates power struggles. It creates power dynamics that we don't want in our community. Like I've said to you before, Keyvious, if you became wealthy because you had your great grandpa had a copper mine and that company poisoned all the rivers, you can't buy currents. It's not convertible. You can't take your extractive wealth and bring it into the current ecosystem. So I believe interest-bearing money and debt is extractive on our people and our value. So the board and I early on decided to make it interest free. And now the regulators and my lawyer are looking at it like, it is so cool that you did that, because you're regulated in a completely different way than actual money. And that brings us to our topic. What is money? And I want to ask you, Heinz, does Germany have a central bank that is exactly like the Federal Reserve? Because what I learned from you and Leander and other German friends is you're very wary of absolute power, and for good reason. Your country was taken from you in a way during World War II by crazy madmen like Hitler, and now you're wary about absolute power, and you're smart about how to handle it and see it coming. So did I ask too many questions? Do you have a central bank?
I can handle it.
Okay.
So first of all, yes, we have a central bank. It's the European Central Bank. It's slightly different organized, of course, because of the union that is involving lots of parties because of those different nations. And the history behind is that there were central banks for each nation before. So France, Germany, Austria, every country, every nation had its own, and it was harmonized in means of implementing the euro and bringing one currency and then making some kind of combined central bank out of lots of different ones. But still, if you look at the money printing, so it means of minting money, if you look at the euro note, the bill, you see that it's still encoded into this long number, which central bank of which country has produced this bill.
Huh.
So it can be tracked back in means of who has given it to the market, but then it's neutral. So if a Greek person is paying with a euro that is produced in Germany because of traveling or whatever, you won't recognize it as a normal user of this money, but there is still a pool of money which is brought together.
That reminds me, I love that you use Greece and Germany because they're often seen as the best economy and the worst economy.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned
wrong.
it. But there are lots of countries in between. So,
Yes.
it's changing.
And that's a wrong perception. Worst is a bad way to say it because actually in Greece they care about leisure.
It's just a weaker economy in means of export power, in means of mass things to bring those values in, but that's not better or worse.
Exactly. So let's go 1 minute on power before we wrap up.
Yes, the power thing is very important because I wouldn't call it good or bad in means of this power, and I don't think the absolute power is good because it's absolutely central. So for me, more the central or non-central, so the distributed organization or the centralized, that's the main point that I cannot accept, because there is not such a one brain controlling everything very fine. So I think how do you call it? Subsidy. If you are
Subsidiary.
yeah, exactly. If you are controlling on that level and on that regional range that is healthy, that's the most important part. And most of the people are discussing the wrong point if I combine the central power with the central banking system, because that's the same problem. You cannot organize a whole Europe with one central place of saying we need lots of money or we have to destroy money. That's not possible because it's too centralistic. Even if you have then the feeling of having one absolute power to turn this knob around and make it wonderful with one switch, but that's not the sensitive switch we need. We need lots of switches in lots of context situations, which are totally contrary. If you look at, let's take Greece again. Greece needs totally different ways of handling this amount of money and this redistribution than Germany. And even if you look into Germany, there are lots of small regions which are not this Germany, but different regions with different needs. And that's the point I would love to discuss more, the centralistic way of bringing in a solution. That's the hard point for making a good solution for me.
Beautiful. I think maybe we do this.
Even if the best brain, even if the best philosopher is trying to do the best at this position, I'm not discussing about those people, if they are able or if they are good thinking. I don't care. It's the systemic problem of deciding things in a central way.
Yeah, beautiful. And maybe next month we can revisit a money talk and have you as a guest again and talk more about central banking, like the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, because those stories of interest are sad and scary. And I would like to, if you don't mind, Keyvious, maybe you can add one thing to wrap things up, but I'll read one quote by John Maynard Keynes. He says in his book, General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, the ideas of economists and political philosophers, both when they are right and when they are wrong, are more powerful than is commonly understood. Indeed, the world is ruled by little else. This is Heinz Hafner, our guest on our 5 at 5 talk. Today, we've talked about what is money. And Keyvious Avery is here as an economics student from Bard College and a colleague of mine. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. And remind us, tomorrow when we talk about the evolution of money, we'll be building off of this topic, and all the information will be available on the HBC Facebook page and YouTube page.
Right. Tomorrow is evolution of money. Wednesday is dollars and inequality. Thursday is universal basic income. And Friday is the current community protection plan. I'm Chris Hewitt.
Hey, folks.
Thanks, Heinz.
I love this. What you are doing here.
Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Have a good day, guys.